welcome back to the podcast School of Love, where we want to help you create parent-child relationships where you can talk about anything, especially about sex. And imagine those questions come about sex, or maybe it starts with, where do babies come from? What do you do? One parent, she decided to write a book about it and share that with all other parents as a great conversation starter. A really very basic, fundamental one that is pretty comfortable. And that's Soyung Pak, and I have her here today with us sharing about her book called Welcome Baby. And she shares the story of why she decided to write that book and how it can really be a great foundation or a stepping stone into deeper conversations that we should essentially be really happy to have with our child. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to School of Love. Today I am here with Soyung Pak, author of this book, Welcome Baby, as well as several other children's books. And so, Soyung, welcome to this podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to tell the story behind my book and introduce it to potentially more people and, and just sort of talk about this issue in general.
Yeah, perfect. That's so great. And so can you tell everyone listening a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I live in New Jersey in the United States, and I'm a children's book author. All my other children's books are fiction children's books about the Asian American experience growing up
Mm-hmm.
as an immigrant. Dear Juno, A Place to Grow, and Sumi's First Day of School. And Welcome Baby was my first foray into nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was a story that I wrote kind of like as a personal project of mine. It took me a long time to write it in terms of getting it out there because it seems that no one wanted a story like this. I shopped
Okay.
it. Yes, I shopped it around to my agent, and my agent kept saying that it was too much like a Dorling Kindersley book. I don't know if you know what a Dorling Kindersley
No,
book,
I don't really know what that is.
but they're like these nonfiction books they're like illustrated with photographs of short sentences and everything like that. They're very conceptual
Hmm.
and subject focused, which mine are, but they tend to be like hardcover, like 12 by like 8 size, like big sort of encyclopedia type books. And so for some reason, I just felt as though this idea of Welcome Baby deserved to be a book and be alive in the world. And I ended up self-publishing it just
Oh,
as
okay.
a personal pet project.
I see. Wow. Nobody would say yes, so you did it yourself.
I did it myself, and I knew like the odds of a self-published book were very, very low. But I kind of didn't really care because I was doing this for myself. And surprisingly, it's not my worst selling book. It actually did better than one of my published books, and my publishers were Random House and Scholastic. So like it surprisingly did well. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great and interesting. And I'm glad you could pull through because, yeah, I find it a really great starter into this conversation of where babies come from. And what inspired you to write that? Like, do you have kids or kids in your life that
Well,
inspired you?
I have 3 daughters, right?
Hmm.
And, inevitably, they want to know where babies come from, right? Especially when they're very young, because I had my second when my first was 2 years old, and she wanted to know, how did the baby get there? And I didn't want to lie, right? I
Hmm.
didn't want to lie. I didn't want to avoid the topic, and I didn't want to like seem like, oh, that it was such a taboo. I didn't want the subject of where babies came from to feel like something secret and only adults know or felt taboo. I wanted it to feel natural. But at the same time, I, as a mom of a 2-year-old, had some reservations about like laying it all out there for a
Mm-hmm.
2-year-old child. Partly because, she's two. I kind of wanted to like, and I know this for better or worse, like this concept of innocence. I just wanted to like protect her innocence a little bit and keep, like, I know that that's just a loaded comment. And, but like, I just wanted to do that. But also, like, I felt as though she couldn't really grasp it all, right?
Mm.
Because even just the bodily parts, she knows, like, you go where you go to the bathroom and where poo comes out and pee comes out, and like you'd have to go through a whole anatomy lesson and just all this. I just had some questions about, like, well, what is the best way to be truthful about where babies come from and be honest, but yet lay the foundation for future conversation. So I wanted it to be something that set the groundwork, so when she's 3 we could add to it, and when she's 5 she can add to it, and always
Mm-hmm.
just like, so it's never hiding something, and it remained factual based and something
Mm-hmm.
about the human body and not taboo. And what I discovered through the process of making this book is that for a lot of parents, this became more of a book for them, not for the kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because parents needed a way to talk about it, because there are a lot of parents that were in similar boats for whatever reasons they have, and there are many. They just didn't feel like either they were ready or their children were ready to just lay all the cards on the table. But they also didn't want to say, we found you in a pumpkin patch, or the stork took you, or something like that.
Yeah.
And for a lot of parents, it became something that helped them enter the conversation and be truthful, but at the same time met their needs to control the conversation for their timeline, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I feel like that's really what it does, this book, because, like you said, it lays the groundwork. And I feel like all the words in the book are also well chosen. Like, they're really comfortable words to say for pretty much, like, I'll say pretty much anyone. And like for future questions, though, like, I think I read it with my 4-year-old, and then later we had some more conversations about where babies come from, and then we can get a bit more into, because you even just showed a picture of a sperm and egg, but like we didn't really talk so much about the sperm. It was just, this is called fertilization. And yeah, when kids are a bit more ready for the questions, I feel then they can ask, oh, okay, like, where does that come from? Or I remember, like, in the book, there was a picture of what the egg looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and I could explain how small it is and then how that multiplies into cells. So I really liked your scientific way of approaching it, but in a really simple way for children um, to understand.
And I also didn't want kids later on, as they did get older, to feel like they had been lied to by their parents, right?
Yeah.
I just always wanted that conversation to evolve naturally, and every family, every child, every parent has a timeline that for everything. There are late bloomers and early bloomers. And, I didn't want a moment like, what do you mean? Like, I remember I used to tell my eldest child that, oh, you need to get to bed by this time or you'll turn into a pumpkin, like from Cinderella.
Okay.
And, you know, and she kind of like, it surprised me that she believed it. And because at one point I'm like, oh, yeah, I just, it's like a throwaway comment like, oh, yeah, remember when I used to tell you like that? And she's like, what? It's not true, right? And so, that was like, oh my gosh, I just, you could like, explain to her, no, it's not true. I just said this, and it became like a ha ha moment. But, things about sex and where babies come from and our bodies, it's not a joke, right? Those are things that you shouldn't feel embarrassed about. Your bodies are your bodies, and the bodily functions are, just natural. And there's already, so much attached to it from society and, whatever religion you fall into or the morality of your culture or whatever. I just wanted to keep it very, very, very like simple so kids could enjoy it and they could feel like it's fact based as they learn more. It's not like, what are you telling me? That wasn't real. You build to it. And I also wanted to keep it very, like, not plain, but like, or flat, but, um, you know, just present it in a way that no matter what your beliefs are or, what you want to do with your child going forward, it was a blank slate that you could build on according to what your personal parenting beliefs might be.
Yeah, that's really practical and useful for lots of parents. And I like that point that it starts the conversation in an honest way because that's a really important point for us parents to consider if we want our kids to keep coming to us on this topic, that we really start it with truth and really do our best to always be truthful and invite those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we might have to say, oh, I need a bit more time to think about that, but still to not shun those away, but really keep them coming.
So, that was basically the origin of it. It's something that I told my kids verbally when they had the question, where do babies come from? Well, they come from eggs, the chicks and stuff like that, and so it was a conversation that I started. And then, I just thought like, this deserves to be a book. I just felt as though it needed to be alive out in the world. So I put it out there for
And was,
better or worse.
yeah, and was the inspiration of the egg just some on the moment inspiration, and then you, because I really like this comparison, like all living creatures come from eggs, and then there are different types, like the mammals and everything else, and so yeah, it's really nice because then also you have these different pictures, like all different kinds of eggs.
I don't know if it was a moment of inspiration. I think it just, they wanted to know where babies came from, and I, it just seemed natural for me, I think, at that time to say, well, babies, all living things come from eggs,
Yeah.
and there are chicken eggs and snake eggs, and just all living things come from eggs. Sometimes the eggs are outside the body, but they're inside the body, and
Hmm.
you know, and when I put the book together, I realized it's also an introductory science lesson as well. What is a
Hmm.
mammal? This is what a mammal is. Mammals have this and this and this, and mammals have eggs inside their body, and and so it teaches, I think, about life and the different types of life, and people are mammals too, which is why we have eggs inside us. And, there's that one scene where, like, you see the embryo growing and everything like
Hmm.
that. And I just wanted a page like a kid could just like flip through because kids are visual learners and a lot of them might not be reading, um, to just like sort of stare at those pictures and
Hmm.
see how things evolve. Like kids as they grow up, they like looking at photographs of themselves when they were a baby and like, that's me when I was just born, and their birth video and whatnot. And I also had this memory, I'm going to date myself, but we had like those encyclopedia sets when I was a kid, just
Hmm.
like, you know, A to Z. And there was a section where that laid out pictures of a developing fetus, but I think it was like a turtle fetus or something like that, not a
Mm,
human fetus.
okay.
And I just thought that was so fascinating just to see how it evolved. In that encyclopedia, they also had a snapshot of like a turtle fetus next to like a horse fetus, next to like, and they all kind of looked similar. And, I just remember thinking as a child that, you know, that it was just so fascinating how like we all living things kind of started in the same way. Now in Welcome Baby, I don't go into that depth, but I just also wanted to give kids an experience of like this is how life develops, right? It develops in the womb, and this is what it looks like, and then all of a sudden one day it comes out, and it's Welcome Baby.
Yeah, that's wonderful that, I mean, if we can really shed any shame on this topic, it's really wonderful because it is fascinating and it's wonderful to give a chance for children to just be fascinated about that and kind of go on this little journey in a book. Or even if a sibling is on the way to just understand that a bit more deeply. Yeah, and one thing I also really liked is that you included a photo of a very realistic looking baby right fresh out of the womb, because I think that's also, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of hidden, like if people
Hmm.
watch movies, then the baby's always perfectly clean, or you just don't see the baby until it actually looks like it's 6 months old or something. And so to just kind of normalize that kind of visual, I think, is also nice because it was nice for me, I think, to yeah, show that to my kids and be like, yeah, this is really what babies look like when they come out.
Well, I wanted it to be fact-based and scientific, right? I didn't
Mm,
want to, because I am not glossing over, omitting portions of it so parents could build on it later on. So the parts that are in there, I wanted it to be rooted in science and rooted in fact and be educational. So when a child uh, looks at the pictures or the photographs in there, I wanted this sense that this is real. It's not a story. This is how it happens. I am being given information, right?
mhm.
And I am learning something about the world. And and for me that was really important because when you have that fact-based scientific foundation, right? That you can build on that, and you can just it grows, and the new and information as it comes along, it just it just blooms with the information you already have. And so, since it was so young, it was a deliberate thing to make it very, I want it to be fun and gentle, but also, respect that children have enormous curiosity, and children are very smart. They know when they're being fed stories, and despite what I just said about the pumpkin like turning into pumpkin, they're smart. They've got like a spidey sense of truth, and I wanted them to have this as a on their path towards what the experience of where babies come from. I wanted it to be real for them, so it is not aha, I took the cover over your eyes and now it's different. It's gonna and I think it's an important thing. When my third daughter, I caught her sort of flipping through it one day, and like she had just started reading, and I could tell that she was just very interested in the photographs and just poring over the details and examining it and like looking
Mm.
at the little details. And I think that that's important because children are curious about the world, and I wanted to give them a fact-based, serious book that respected their curiosity and their developing interests.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of parents would love to thank you for that. I actually heard about it from a friend who saw it on someone else's bookshelf. It's just kind of been word of mouth of how it got onto my shelf. I also wanted to ask you, so this kind of was your starting story for your family with your children about where babies come from. And do you have other ideas how to continue that conversation on, yeah, where do babies come from or anything sex related, how to continue those topics in the family?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, having my oldest child is now 19, right?
Okay.
And and my
You look
youngest,
really young.
oh, thank you. And my youngest daughter is 12, right? And so I feel as though I'm at like it's like when you talk about sex, I feel as though there are these like stages, like the
Hmm.
first stage being where babies come from, right?
Right.
And then, that's fine, right? And they're a little bit curious and there's little things here and there, like, how does the sperm get in there? That's a question that, we just answered, well, the father has the sperm and he gives it to the mother. And, you can leave it there or you can go into more detail. Every family is going to be different. But after that, I just sense that there's like nothing, like, like their curiosity goes into like video games or, sports or whatever they're doing until they get to like around like 10, 11, 12, and all of a sudden, the kids with the older brothers or the older sisters, they're just a little bit more advanced than the other kids. And then like all that misinformation gets shared on the playground,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And then like there's like almost like a secrecy about it. I remember my oldest daughter once, we were out buying sneakers or back to school clothes or something, or coats, something. We were at a store and then she looks at me and she goes, I know what sex is, like as it was like a dirty word. And like, and what do you know? And she's like, I know it means whether you're a boy or a girl, right? And so that is, I was just like, okay. And we just left it there, but it planted a seed in my mind that we were going to have to, you know, have this conversation, like not when we were not in the department store. But that made me aware that already kids her age know it's something that they shouldn't be talking about or they shouldn't know about, right? Or they didn't want their parents to know that they knew about it because it was very much like, I know what it is, like a whisper. And so I feel that is a stage where they need more information, right? And that's also the stage where, at least where we live, the schools start having like the little in class lessons about puberty and how your body changes and menstruation. And so that I feel is a place where you need to have a conversation with your children before you get all the playground talk confusing your
Mm,
child, right? Because there's so much of it and it's all done in secrecy. And the parents, I think they know, but they don't know what they're talking about. And so, and then I think it just has to be, this is what sex is, this is the act of sex and just an effort to take shame away from it and, and to make it untaboo and something that is not like, whatever like stories or beliefs or misinformation is going on in the playground, you just want to give your kids a tool to be like, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. No, that's not true, especially in this day of the internet. And then, I feel as though there is another stage when they get into middle school and maybe late middle school or early high school, depending on the community you live in, where kids all of a sudden develop an awareness that it's not just man and woman, it's not just heterosexual sex, that there are bisexuals and homosexuals and transsexuals and non-gender and just so many, like this world of relationships and the way people have these relationships, just they become aware of it. And I feel as though at that age, for me personally, I had to communicate and I wanted to communicate with my kids that they never had to hide anything, right? They never had to be ashamed of anything. And, whatever they wanted to discuss or bring home or be was fine, because I just didn't want my child to, suffer in silence and worry about what we might say or what we might do. Part of me believes, it's not, and it doesn't even have to be, oh, I don't want my child to be afraid of coming out to me. It's not just that. It's a conversation. It could be a conversation of, oh my God, we just, I heard on, in the lunchroom that this kid is a pansexual. What is that? Just to give, there's so much information out in the world, right? And that's got to be confusing for kids. And so I think it's just this, it continues this pathway of layering on information, so they have information, so they are equipped to evaluate the world on a factual term, on their terms, in a way that they are comfortable with, and to give them a filter. So a safe filter, so they don't have to feel as though they have to navigate this very complex world by themselves. And it's certainly not a world that I had to navigate when I was growing up, because there was no internet. And, it was I think the term LGBTQ or anything like that, it was not even on the radar. It's just culturally, my small community. And I feel as though the kids are given so much information. The information is different. The information you get when you're 10 on the playground may be different from the information that you get when you're in 8th grade in the lunchroom, but it's still information that they need to navigate and figure out for themselves. And then the next level that I feel is the emotional layer, when they get older in high school, because they start dating, and there's a lot of self-esteem wrapped into it, and especially with girls, oh, she's so pretty and I'm not pretty, and he's gonna like her and not like me, or she, whatever. A guy could, I guess, has similar thoughts. I only have girls, so I conjecture here, but whatever it is, I feel as though, in those teen years, you're still trying to figure out your value and your purpose and your lane in the world, and relationships, and how to develop a relationship. Those are all very confusing things, your own comfort. How do you give consent? How do you not give, what is consent? What is abusive? What is not abusive? Those things come to play as you get older as well. So I think there's always information that's just being thrown at you, and that you just have to build on. And the role of a parent is to help them navigate the information that is given to them in a neutral, safe way, because they are their own people, right? And they are going to come to their own judgment.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge world, and I think to do that alone is just super lonely, and overwhelming, especially now, like you said, with the internet. And so, yeah, that's my wish as well, to just be there for my kids, to help them navigate and know like, yeah, what's true, what's not true, and give them the facts, and just support them, and also give them this meaning behind sexuality, that because I feel like in society today it's kind of thrown around very casually, but to give them also this meaning that, yeah, it's actually a very intimate thing, that you should really think a lot about and prepare for. I really like starting out with a really great foundation and then continuing that conversation. I read in one book, the title, it's from Stan and Brenna Jones. They wrote lots of books on God's design for sex, it's called. And yeah, one thing that they mentioned is this is a lifelong journey. It's not just teenagers or not just younger children, giving them the basics, but it's a lifelong learning process. And if we could just be present as support for our kids, I think that's just such a lightening of the burden, kind of, because things will be tough, things will be complicated at times at any point in life. Yeah, I also have a question. If you ever got feedback from your book, from parents or from children, that ever surprised you and that taught you something about these conversations that take place between parent and child?
That surprised me. I presented it as accurately as I could. And so, most of the comments that I've received have been like, it's just a nice, gentle introduction, which is what people were looking for. A lot of the books out there for the little kids are more robust. They give more information, and there really isn't anything out there that is just a conversation starter versus like, well, my kid asked, so let me give them all the details. So I think people appreciate that this is just a gentle way to start the conversation, and they can just have the, just address things on their own time.
Yeah, which I think, I don't know how you grew up, but I think as in my childhood or just the previous generations, this conversation was hard to have as a family. Like, it was very full of embarrassment or shame or something like this. Did you feel like you had a good foundation to come from, or that you were just building this up yourself?
Well, I would definitely build this up myself. We just never really, it was not anything discussed except, there was that sense of, good girls don't. And for lack of another way of putting it, and that when I was growing up, dating was supposed to be a distraction. I was too young to be dating in high school, and I should be focusing on getting into college. And that was the end of that conversation. And at one point, I don't know where it shifted. I guess at some point, I got old enough, and my parents just assumed that I knew, and that was basically it.
I see. And you decided you wanted it differently for your children.
Yes. I don't know if it was a very proactive thing. It's not anything that I planned out in my head, but I just didn't want to have my kids feel like I was dismissive of their curiosity when they were curious. And I did not want my children, even when they were young, to feel like asking questions was a bad thing.
Yeah. And do you have any tips for parents who might feel uncomfortable about this kind of thing? How to be able to start this conversation? I mean, you can say read your book with your kids, but
Well, my book is specifically for that, for parents who just need, for better or worse, you can use it to have a gentle start to the conversation. I guess some parents do use it to just buy them some time until they know how to have that conversation, or when they think their kids are old enough to have that conversation. But it offers you a real conversation without not perhaps not going into the parts that make people feel a little bit skittish or uncomfortable. But at some point, I think your kids are going to know, right? And you're, like the situation with my daughter in the department stores, as saying like, I know what sex is. It's like when you're a man or a woman. They're going to drop hints, and I feel as though most parents will respond to that. That's a clue that they're asking for more information. And I don't want to pass judgment or tell parents how to respond, but I think once your kid makes it known that they are having these discussions, or it's on their mind and it is in their consideration set because they're more aware of it, you could either, you can address it in the way that you feel comfortable, but my advice is that it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, you're never going to have more questions going forward. I think kids can understand when parents don't want to talk about something. And if you close off that path of discussion, especially when they're like 9 or 10 or 11, I think lose the opportunity to carry on that conversation when they're 15 and 16 and 18 and 19, or even like beyond in their 20s, if they still have questions. So it's a way to keep that conversation going, even if you just do the best you can. Just do the best you can. Continue the conversation. Keep the conversation open, because you want your kids to come back to you, because it is confusing. There's a lot out there, and you want to guide them. And if kids sense discomfort, or it's a topic that cannot be discussed in the home, they're going to turn elsewhere for the answers. It could be the internet, a lot of scary things on the internet. It could be, from friends, and who knows where they're getting their information, or, so you just want to make sure that the information you give them is safe. It's safe for yourself, safe for the kid, because you want that intimacy between a parent and child. Because if you close it off, then, it's hard to open that door again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some parents might not trust themselves, but most likely we are the people that love our child the most in this world, and that's already a really great place to start from in being able to have these conversations, because we really want the best for our kid also in their sexuality. Parents are really the best source of information, or filter, like you said.
Yeah. And there is no right answer, no wrong answer. Every parent is different and every child is different. And you do not have to have the perfect answer, right? But I think the most important thing is just your willingness to be there, because I do believe children sense that. And if they sense that you are willing to be there for them in your responses, and you take their questions and curiosity, seriously, I think that is like 99% of the conversation.
I really love that willingness just to be there. It's okay if you're there in an awkward way or a confident way. As long as you're there, it's good. Yeah, thank you for that. And so you also wrote a few other books. I just wanted to touch on those a little bit. Like, I think, yeah, Sumi's First Day of School Ever and A Place to Grow. Are these also like written from the same place, like to guide children in these situations? Like, did you live those yourselves, or something that your children lived through?
Well, I was an immigrant, one of the first immigrants to the United States in the area that I grew up, right? So there
Okay.
weren't a lot of other Korean Americans there. And so my family was very close knit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the few people that other Koreans that were there, we kind of all knew each other. And my parents immigrated kind of knowing, I think, in the back of their heads that they weren't really going to go back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother really did a good job of bringing my ties to my family back home alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became a very, very foundational core memory for me. And I brought that into my books. So for Dear Juno, it's about a child who thinks about his grandmother back home. And it was based on my mother. We would play in the backyard, and every time an airplane would fly over, we kind of would pretend that it was my grandmother coming over to visit us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so from that, I developed a story about a little boy who thinks about his grandmother, and they kind of like exchange letters with each other, even though he doesn't really know how to write Korean and she doesn't know how to write English. And they do it by exchanging photographs and pictures. And it's a way of building connections and communicating um, with the loss of language, I guess, which a lot of immigrants come up with. But that was my first book, and I won the Ezra Jack Keats Award for that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I followed up with A Place to Grow, which was really kind of answering the question why people move from one place to another. And I took the concept of a seed flying from a tree, landing somewhere to find fertile ground, and it's more like a it was just like, why do people, like, sometimes there's war, sometimes there's job opportunities, but like no matter how, and it ends with like, no matter how far you go, right, you're still close and you'll always be family. And so that's sort of explaining distance. And and that one was about immigration as well, but also just like for any grandparent and child. There's someone could be in California and someone could be in New Jersey, and you see each other like maybe once a year if you're lucky. So it's really about like why people leave and how you can stay close and what brings people together. And then Sumi's day of school is just a core memory I have of my first day of kindergarten and my mother braiding my hair. And I didn't know any English, and she was
Mm-hmm.
very like, and she just sort of like teaching me, and I kept repeating back to her like, "My name is so young. My name is so young." And so it's about Sumi's first day of school. She didn't speak any English. She goes to school, and it's all sort of scary for her. And then she meets a friend. But just experiences about, I think, um, immigrant children adapting to life in the unknown. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. And um, yeah, I actually, when I was 12, my family, we moved to Korea.
oh,
And so it's just really interesting. I had also an experience where I was the only, blue-eyed girl in school. Everyone else was Korean. And yeah, it was interesting to look through your titles. I didn't read them yet, but um, a similar experience, but in different cultures. And would you say your family culture now, do you like bring a lot of Korean culture into it? Like cook Korean food, for example?
well, I do cook Korean food. And I think, food is, I mean, universal, right? Like just, so we have that. And everyone in our family is a foodie. And my husband loves food. And so after our first child was born, we're like, we cannot have picky eaters. So, like, we cannot have picky eaters. And so we deliberately would expose them to different flavors and textures. So,
Mm,
we weren't eating buttered noodles until they were like
right.
28. Um, and so we've always explored different food, and I love cooking food. Like, one of the things that I love doing is when I travel, buying a cookbook from that country and try
Mm,
experimenting with that. But like, I do cook a lot of Korean food. I think it ties them down to their heritage, and so that's the primary way. Um, but I have to say that, like, I think they are definitely American kids.
yeah.
So they are definitely American kids. I mean, and that's fine. That's fine with me because I have lived in the United States for so long. I'm definitely an American person at this point in my life. And, you know, this is the culture that we live in, and this is the culture where they go to school with. And, you know, the values that I hope they have is that all cultures are valuable and to be accepting of people regardless of where they come from or their country of origin. To me, it's just that's the great thing about living in a diverse world, that you're a citizen of the world and not so much a citizen of one country.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so grateful for my experience moving to Korea, because I feel had I stayed just where I was, I would only know basically that culture, but then I got to learn a new one. And yeah, for me, Korean food is really, it's my nostalgic food. Um, because I was there from 12 till 19, and I don't know,
Oh, wow.
it was, I mean, it's not my childhood necessarily, it was more my teenagerhood, but still a staple part of my life. I just, yeah, love Korean food. Unfortunately, I didn't learn to cook it, so I had to learn that much later in life. I'm the oldest, so they were much younger. My parents could even say they're Korean kids, because, they were just 4 and 7 when we moved, and really just blended into the culture. Whereas I moved when I was 19, and I've been in Europe for over 10 years. So I feel like this is now the culture that I'm comfortable with, but still comfortable also with Korean culture and American culture, because I was born in America. And yeah, and then I have a sister in America, so she moved to America when she was quite young, about maybe also 18, 19. So yeah, it's I love that, to just be open to cultures. And in my own family we have 3 different kinds really, to so a big family meeting is then also blending in all these cultures. So it's a really, yeah, great experience.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, we had doenjang jjigae last night.
Oh, you
Yeah.
get all the ingredients in Germany?
Yeah, we can. We have some Asian shops, thank goodness, that import, yeah, a lot of Korean products.
Oh, wow. I'm impressed.
Yeah, although there could be more, for sure. Like, I'm jealous of my sister in Seattle. She said there are like French Korean fusion restaurants, and in even normal supermarkets, you get lots of Korean products now. But I can't complain because I can still get what I need.
My favorite Korean fusion story is, they have a Michelin starred Korean restaurant in New York City, and my husband ate there at a dinner event, a work dinner event, and he came home and said there was this dish on the menu that they called Korean paella, and when they brought
Whoa.
it out, it was just kimchi fried rice.
Oh, okay. Well, that is a classic.
That is a classic. But I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on, So Young. It was really nice to hear from you and about your book and your motivation behind it. Are you still thinking of writing, or is that?
I am actually. I have been working on a middle grade novel, and
Oh,
so that's been just slow in the going, but hopefully it will get there.
all right. Well, stay tuned, and yeah, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much, Soyung Pak, for being on this podcast, taking your time and sharing your experiences with us. Unfortunately, her video got cut off, and so you guys don't hear her saying goodbye. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this podcast and what we could share. Spread the word and stay connected through YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, and our newsletter, which you can subscribe to on our website, schooloflove.org. Really hope to hear from you.